Sunday morning cold, eyes on the score, touchdown dance ball, craving for more. Friends are calling, trades are on fire. Rookies falling, championship desire. Fantasy football fever, chasing the dream. Top of the leaderboard, we're the winning team.
Welcome to the Fantasy Football Healers program. Get ready to delve into the world of the hybrid offense weapon, the tight end. Today, Colten and I are going to give you our top 10 rookie tight ends for this year's 2025 class. You can find us at FF Healers and at FF Captain 22 on Twitter X. Also follow on YouTube. Just search FF Healers for shorts, podcast videos, and other fantasy relevant videos. Welcome in, everybody.
Welcome in, everybody. Another week, another group of rookies. We're talking about Dustin's favorite group of rookies this year, the tight ends. Dustin loves himself a tight end. He's said it once. He's said it a million times on this podcast. A good tight end is just great to have.
It's a very, very unique offensive weapon, the tight end. They have to be able to be on the field at all times. They have to be able to block. They have to be able to catch. They've got to be fast. Colten, before we delve into some of these tight ends and some of the news, what are some of the things that you're looking for with your tight ends as far as your rankings go?
Squats. Lots and lots of squats.
That's a good one, Dad.
Not that kind of tight end. No? Okay.
No.
With my tight ends, I'm looking for the guys that have the potential receiving upside. I want to see that big athleticism. I want to see them, really knock it off with the athleticism. That's what I'm really looking for. Of course, you want to pay attention, as we've learned with some of these super athletic tight ends. We've learned that we want them to be able to also do the other things that a tight end does, which is block, and be able to do that well so they can stay on the field and get those easy little dump offs where they block for a few seconds, see that their quarterback is under pressure and can then leak out and just get a couple dump offs. And so we've learned that some of these guys that are super athletic but aren't quite there with the blocking or are just more of a hybrid wide receiver aren't working out as well because the NFL adapts and they're seeing oh, hey, this guy is not a good blocker. They're probably just going to use him as a pass catcher and kind of switch up their strategy on them and don't even treat him as a blocking tight end. So, you want somebody that can do both, but I just like to prefer the guys that are, to take a shot on the guys that's super athletic and hope he can develop his blocking skills.
Yep. Unlike the wide receiver position where the athleticism doesn't matter as much, with the tight ends, athleticism matters a ton. Outside of draft capital, landing spots, opportunity, those are obvious things for every position. But the 40 meters, we're looking for 4.5 and below. That's difference-making speed at the tight end position. 4.7 and higher, you're going to need a lot more of the targets. Okay, thinking of the Zach Ertz of the world. Long speed matters, so 80% speed scores are what we're really wanting. I like the bigger tight ends personally because the move tight ends that they turn into the Trey Burtons of the world. At about 5+ years ago, I used to only look at how athletic is this person? How much speed? One of the most athletic tight ends that had come out in NFL history is Mike Gesicki. Well, he goes to the wrong system with the Dolphins, and then all of a sudden he's not giving you fantasy points. And then he went to New England, really wasn't giving you fantasy points, but last year he finds himself in a better situation with the Bengals, and now that move tight end prospect is now firing 5-6 years later. So athleticism matters, but you also have to have the scheme. But I'm also looking for the size. So if they're big enough, they can play inline, they can play outside, they can play slot, someone that's a little bit more versatile. We have guys like Tucker Kraft last year. He was running the ball a couple times or doing the tush push. He was the guy that the Packers were using as a tush push guy instead of Love. And so, how versatile are these players? High dominator rating, college yards per reception, speed score, agility score. These are all things I'm looking at. But specifically for the college dominator, they need to have at least like a 50 percentile score in order to be considered in any of your rookie drafts. That's just my opinion.
Yeah. Just tell me why Jelani Woods didn't work out, man. I don't understand.
Can't stay healthy.
So
And
sad. The most athletic
and
tight end of all time.
and the Colts have like a plethora of tight ends, and they're only going to add to it in this year's draft.
Stop hurting my feelings even more. I do appreciate you saying Trey Burton rather than Dalton Kincaid. So shout out to you on that one. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, I like Trey Burton. Perfect example of a guy who's a move tight end. If he's in the right system, like when he was with Philly, he played well. I think Trey Burton, he actually played for your Colts at one time, didn't he? And then he became less productive.
I believe it was a short period, yes.
Yeah, and I think he might have even been with the Bears at one time too, but
You
not
played.
as productive as he was when he was with the Philadelphia Eagles. Colton, before we get into the rookie tight ends, there is a little bit of news that is broke. Derek Carr is contemplating season-ending shoulder surgery. My understanding is his throwing shoulder, which opens the door for the Saints to either draft a quarterback, sign a quarterback, or lean on Spencer Rattler for the 2025 season.
How quickly after that news broke do you think Aaron Rodgers was trying to message the team? That's my real question.
Aaron Rodgers, I've heard Cooper Rush being linked to the Saints before this news broke, like about a month before. Cooper Rush is still available. I think if the Saints are in cap hell, they've been in cap hell since Drew Brees. They've been just pushing the buck down the road. This team needs a lot more than just a quarterback. And so I don't think they should be a team that considers a quarterback in the first round of the NFL draft. I think they need to pick up a veteran. If they can get Aaron Rodgers on like a cheap deal, sure, fine. If you want to have that as your quarterback, I think the problem with that is I think he's going to win maybe a few more games than what you want, especially if you're considering a quarterback in next year's class or the year after. But Cooper Rush has shown that he can actually play some ball as a backup tight end. He has a lot of experience because Dak Prescott has been out a number of times over the last 3 years, and he's been, pretty good when he is playing. And actually, last year he looked like he was a better quarterback than Dak Prescott while he was playing.
I mean, yeah, there's a quarterback sitting right next door too, and that's Kirk Cousins. The problem is they're going to have to convince Atlanta to eat a lot of that contract, and it doesn't sound like Atlanta is willing to trade him away and eat the contract money is the problem. So it's definitely interesting. It's painful for Rashid Shaheed shares is my big thing. They had such a connection. He absolutely loved bombing it down to Shaheed. Anyone that was kind of banking on Shaheed making a big comeback this year, that's got to be a nice kick to the jewels for that one.
This may be your opportunity, Colton, to go get a few more shares of Shaheed while people are worried or concerned about Derek Carr's injury or even looking at Olave as an option. This is probably your open door moment before the NFL draft. And, that door might be open a little bit longer if they still haven't figured out what they're doing.
I mean,
go ahead.
Him and Olave just for some reason did not have a connection. So this might be actual good news for Olave owners because they just could not figure it out on the field. Derek Carr did not like him. Derek Carr was always blaming him for stuff. And honestly, it makes me excited as an Olave owner to see if there's a potential out there for someone else to come in and step in. Now, if you tell me it's Spencer Rattler, then, but I mean, if they can bring someone else in that's competent enough to get the ball just to Olave, I'd be real happy.
A quarterback that they're not going to sign? Joe Flacco, because Joe Flacco is signed with the Browns for $4 million on a one-year deal. Now he's going to be competing with the Super Bowl winning Kenny Pickett.
Super Bowl winner.
So this just solidifies, don't believe that the Browns are looking at quarterback at pick 2. There's been a lot of news that has been stating the obvious as well that they're not looking for a quarterback there in the first round. So, Joe Flacco, Kenny Pickett, I think this is what they're going to roll out, especially if Watson's still injured.
Well, did you not see the breaking news of Deshaun Watson announced that he's going to come back and be better than ever? Is it not news?
I I don't believe it.
Oh, well, I mean, I don't believe
Better
it
at
either,
what?
but that's what he said.
Better at what? It wasn't very specific. Better at what?
Yeah, just better than ever.
Okay. There is a little bit more news here. Isaiah Bond had turned himself in Texas for the Texas police because there was allegations of a sexual assault. He has been released on bond. He says that it's fake news.
Bond on bond. Interesting. Not a great way to start out your rookie campaign there is with allegations already. If he gets released of them and it is found to be fake news, that's an awful way to start your rookie campaign. If it is true, well, that's just, I don't want anything to do with them. Because if you're starting out that way, it's just going to, we've seen it roll downhill with fast. I don't understand what it is. What is it with these rookies, man?
I don't know.
They just
It's
come out and
always a week before the NFL draft that some of these guys are getting picked up for just all these things, and whether it's true or whether it's fake. Bond's going to slide in the draft a bit more. I think he left a little bit of stink on him also when he said he was going to be the fastest wide receiver, and then his teammate Golden ended up having a better 40 time than he did. He still ran fine. It was like a 4.4 or a 4.39 was the official, but I don't know. I really didn't care much for Bond as a wide receiver prospect personally.
me neither.
Speaking of Texas, a couple other Texas news. The Texans have brought in Caleb Johnson and Trey Harris as top 30 visits. They are looking to improve their offense, Colton.
Yeah, the Caleb Johnson one is interesting to me. They still have Joe Mixon there. Um, you know, I
29.
I like Joe Mixon though. He was good last year. We did see him fall off towards the end of the year, but he was still pretty productive as the year went on. He is aging and starting to get older, so it makes sense. But to go and spend, because Caleb Johnson is probably going to be a round 2 pick. So to spend a second round when you already have Joe Mixon, I could see them, you know, I mean, if they could get a trade away for Joe Mixon or something, but I would just find it hard to swallow, having a talent like Joe Mixon on the team who did great for your team last year to spend such high capital on someone that could be an absolute work dog, because Caleb Johnson's an every down kind of guy. He's big enough to handle that workload, and that's kind of how he's seen. So it would just be an interesting move. Now, if they were to bring someone like one of the shifty guys, that would make more sense to me. Give somebody to help take off some of the load of Mixon, but to bring in the work dog of Johnson, that would be an interesting move to me. Trey Harris, though, I would like that.
Yeah, I'd like both of them.
I would like that.
I think any of these players that are connected with the Texans, an up and coming, offensive team, they really were spinning their wheels last year when they were having all the injuries, and they need to get some depth at the wide receiver position, and they need to get some depth behind Mixon, because even last year when Mixon went down, they didn't really have a whole lot behind him other than Dameon Pierce, and guess what? He didn't do a darn thing last year.
No, they do need someone to back him up. So
The Texas running back, Jaden Blue, was a top visit for the New England Patriots. This is the third running back that they've brought in within the last couple weeks. So New England is definitely looking at revamping the running back core.
yeah, I mean, we saw last year Ramondre just was not enough. They did sign him to like a 3-year deal there. So they extended him there, but he just wasn't enough. And I don't know if it's more Ramondre to blame or if it was just that system.
Line?
I mean, yeah, it was just an awful, awful offense. I mean, they didn't have any pass catchers of consequence aside from Hunter Henry, so they were able just to stack the box and just eat Ramondre alive. So I know we said it last year that we liked Ramondre, but I mean, unless they fix some things there, he's just going to get eaten alive again. And any running back that goes there, I fear the same fate for them, just because they're going to have to really revamp this wide receiver core. And all they have right now is Stephon Diggs, coming off of an injury, Stephon Diggs. So I would be, lower on any running back that kind of goes there.
Ramondre Stevenson and his owners are going to be holding their breath while the New England Patriots are on the clock, because I really think that they're still going to be going with the running back at some point. And because this class is so loaded, they'd be ignorant not to at least get one of these guys, or at least bring in some off the streets that aren't getting drafted. I mean, there's still going to be plenty that aren't drafted in this year's NFL draft.
Don't you speak J.K. Dobbins into the Patriots for me. Don't you do it.
I would still like him to sign for Minnesota. They keep saying the Vikings are going to be looking at running back. I just saw something yesterday about the Vikings drafting a quarterback, which I'm like, oh, now my ears are wide open.
Not
But
in this class.
we only have 4 picks, so I really don't see that happening. I really don't see us spending a future pick in order to trade back into this year's class. If we trade maybe a back end player for a day 3 pick, maybe, but I doubt it.
JK to the Vikings, make it happen.
Please, please. And lastly, for the news, going back to where J.K. Dobbins was last year with the Chargers, Tyler Conklin, the tight end, has signed a 1-year deal with the Chargers. Do you think this blocks the Chargers from drafting a tight end from this year's class?
No. I'm not worried about it. Conklin had his games here and there that he would kind of go off, but I don't know if that was more the Aaron Rodgers effect, because Aaron Rodgers can't throw the ball 20 yards downfield anymore or not. But he did target him quite a bit, and
Zach Wilson did too.
But yeah, I'm not concerned about Tyler Conklin.
That brings us to our top 10 rookie tight ends, Colton. And to kick us off at number 10, I'll have you start. I will personally say that I thought number 9 and number 10, I had a really, really tough time with figuring out how I wanted to rank these tight ends.
Yeah, so my number 10 is, I don't know if he's a lesser known guy, and we'll see where he ends up on yours. But he ended up on my 10 because I really wanted to talk about him. I like him. And that's Jalen Conyers. So he's just an interesting prospect for me, coming out of Texas Tech there. He's very versatile. He played quarterback quite a bit. I believe in college he was actually signed as a quarterback to Oklahoma before transferring to Arizona as a tight end. So
I had him as a wide receiver convert to tight end.
I had him as a quarterback.
Yeah,
maybe
I think he was a quarterback in high school, but I think he went out as a wide receiver in college.
All right. Well, I'm going to have to start finding your sources. But anyways, he's interesting. I think he had some really good body control and was good at the catch point and everything. He obviously still needs to work on his blocking. His blocking ability wasn't the greatest thing, and I think that could be what holds him off the field. But with his, he has relatively good athletic ability. So I really liked that in him. I think he has the potential to be a relatively good pass catching tight end if he can figure out that blocking portion. But I like some of these converted quarterback, wide receiver, tight end guys because they kind of know a little bit about everything. They know what the quarterback needs. They know what the wide receiver does, So seeing that just kind of perks my interest to him because he's going to be a guy that probably goes either late day 2, early day 3-ish. I think probably day 3 more, but it's just a guy that I can probably go and pick up undrafted on my rookie drafts, or if some buzz gets brought up on him, spending a tossing a fourth or whatever, or something I just don't care about that much, just to see what he develops into. And that's what you're kind of doing with these later tight ends anyways. It's like a fourth round pick and you're like, I don't know who to do. Running back or tight end is a pretty good guess, to just kind of toss one of those at and let them develop. So I like him.
So, as I said, I thought number 9 and number 10 were really challenging for me. I was doing some deep dives to figure out, like, who do I want to put in there? Who has a little bit more upside? Jalen Conjers, he is an older prospect. He's 23.7 years old. But at the tight end position, it takes time to cook. As you said, he was a quarterback that went to wide receiver, that went to tight end. He did play all around the field. With Texas Tech, he played the slot. He played inline. He played the wildcat formations because of his quarterback prowess from high school. He was not a great route runner, and as you said, there were some concerns with blocking. He averaged 400 yards a year for the last 3 years. He had 5 touchdowns this past season. He also had 8 carries for 31 yards and 2 touchdowns in 2024. And in 2023, he did run the ball 22 carries for 92 yards and a score. So it makes him a more versatile player. It is a new position. He is a developmental tight end, and these converts, they take a little bit of time, especially not only in college, but also in the NFL. I had Conjers as my tight end 9. And one thing that kind of led me to this, not only is it going to take him some time at the position, but in per player profiler, he had the number 1 athleticism score for this year's 2025 tight end class. He was number 17 athleticism score in the entire class at all positions, number 49 athleticism score all time at the tight end position. That ranks that has 523 tight ends in the database. So athleticism, it matters, and I think he's going to be a decent prospect. But as you said, he's probably a guy you can get on the waivers after your drafts are over.
Just a nice little sleeper for everyone to start out the day,
Yep. So you had Jalen Conjers as your number 10. He's my number 9. My number 10, and I got to tell you, I thought this guy before the combine was going to be a guy that was going to be right around that number 5, number 6 tight end. One of those guys that maybe people were sleeping on. But then at the combine, he completely just fell flat on his face. He has now moved down. He was below number 10 actually for me until, honestly, last night, this morning, when I was looking at my tight ends, I'm like, God, who can I put as my number 10? Gunnar Helm of Texas. He has a 6'5" frame, 255 pounds. He was a yak machine while he was with Texas this year. He does have good size. He had good hands. My concern was his athleticism. He ran a 4.8 4.40. He came out later and said that he rolled his ankle at the combine and wasn't healthy enough to run at the pro day. He did battle it out for the rest of the combine. Small circles around the NFL believe that he would have ran closer to a 4.6, and if he would have ran a 4.6, he would have had a much better 40 and speed score, which would have increased his value a bit more in my rankings. He was productive only in the final season of Texas on a team that played below expectations with Quinn Ewers behind center. He has perceived value here at number 10, but his poor measured athleticism from the combine scores and he's a well-known commodity. And if he would have ran closer to that 4.6 40, his speed score would have been greater than 100. So I have him here at 10, just mainly because I had a tough time figuring out who I wanted at 10, and Gunnar Helm at this time is my number
know? Interesting. We had him and Jalen flip-flopped.
Righty.
So I've got Gunnar Helm there sitting at 9. That is exactly, you hit the nail on the head there. He was a hot commodity, thinking everyone's seeing him closer to the top, came out and fell on his face and came out, rolled his ankle. I still like what he can do. He has some interesting things to him. His big thing, though, is his blocking ability. And that's kind of everything I've been reading up on has been, he's going to be the tight end two on a team, and he's going to be the guy that's primarily the blocker and going to be used more as like a blocking tight end. So, you're kind of looking at a ceiling possibly of someone like Dawson Knox, which isn't a horrible thing to have. He does have the catching ability. He's got some soft hands and able to make the catch, but he doesn't run like a delicious route tree, as I would call it. It's just kind of blah. It's okay. And so it's just like, hey, maybe he could have some Dawson Knox to him where he's able to sneak out on those after the block. So it's definitely still an interesting prospect to have, but I've got him sitting there at 9 primarily just because of that.
At the combine, I will say Gunnar Helm, along visualizing Gunnar Helm with all the other tight ends in the class, his upper body looked tiny. It looked small. He looked like a smaller tight end. For being 255 pounds, he did not look it on the field. That's where I had him a lot lower down on my rankings. I think I had him down closer to 14, 15, and he was sitting at, I have him in a category of do not draft.
Ooh, that's not a good category.
Yeah, so that's my number 10. Jalen Conjures is our number 9. Colton, why don't you kick us off with your number 8?
So my number 8 is Mitchell Evans out of Notre Dame there. Projected to be an early day 3 pick. He looked like he was going to have a big breakout season in 2023, was starting out hot and was up to like 400 some yards in 2023 and then tore his ACL. And he just looked like he was going to be an interesting prospect coming off of the ACL tear for 2024 season. It's tough that first year coming back anyways, and he did not play up to his hype of what he was playing to in 2023. But what I saw out of him in 23, I liked. He was able to, just kind of leak out there. He's one of the better blockers of the class, and he was able to play that Dawson Knox role once again. I'm gonna compare a lot of these guys to Dawson Knox because he just eats up at my Dalton Kincaid shares. But he's got good, reliable hands. His route tree is once again, limited, but he was good in that short to intermediate range of the field. He was able to kind of find those open spots. So I do like that. His athleticism's okay. He does not have the elite speed that we're looking for. But once again, it's another one of those blocking tight ends that might get you a few catches per game if you could end up being like a plug and play kind of guy, like that's able to leak out on the block and after the block and everything. So, but I liked him, especially his 2023 film was more interesting than coming off of his 2024.
Yeah, with a lot of these tight ends in the class, actually, a number of them had run that 4.7. And again, with the 4.7, I talked about like they're going to need to get targets in order to be, useful for fantasy football. Mitchell Evans, he ran a 4.74. That's 58th percentile. His speed score, if you calculate it with his size, he has a bigger frame. His speed score was actually in the 74th percentile for the tight end position. So he did pretty well there. This is a guy that I'm probably going to shoot myself in the foot with having him as low as I have him. I have him as 13, and he was in consideration for my number 10. He was bigger than expected when I was watching him at the combine, but he looked waterlogged. But he's even with that waterlogged appearance, he still ran that 4.74 at the combine. He does excel with finding like the soft spots in the zone coverage, but he struggled against man coverage, and he did have sure hands, like you said, Colton.
Who's your number 8?
Number 8, I think this is not the guy that Zach from Decode the Quarterback is waiting on. He's gonna have to wait till the end of the episode before I break that news to him. But I will say that this tight end was a guy that I started to get a little bit more interested in. I had to learn a little bit more about him after the combine, and that's Joshua Simmons of South Carolina. He's athletic. He was South Carolina's number 1 weapon. He ran a 4.66 40. He was a super senior, so again, a little bit older prospect. He was a wide receiver and a safety in high school. Played 4 years at Western Kentucky with extra eligibility due to 2020, and he led in every single receiving category in his final season at Western Kentucky. He also holds a Western Kentucky school record for touchdowns by a tight end And you're wondering, what other tight ends would have came out of Western Kentucky? Tyler Higbee and Jack Doyle were part of those programs. And South Carolina used him at all three levels as a receiver, as a receiving weapon. He had yak. He has range with his route running, so he's a much better route runner than like a Congers or maybe even a Gunnar Helm. And he was a good blocker as far as like a wide receiver convert goes. So Joshua Simmons is my number 8.
The Doylinator? Oh man, I did love me some.
I've played him many times, many times. If in doubt, just play Jack Doyle, and you'd get your 7 points, and you'd be fine.
I loved the Doylinator, man. He was my boy.
So I was pulling there. I don't think there's a lot of people that know about Joshua Simmons. We'll see if he's part of your top 10. And
No, he's not.
okay.
No. I've got him actually. Let me look. He's at 13 for me.
Okay. Did anything of what I said, did that help? Like,
No,
did that give you any more confidence
I
for
mean,
Joshua Simmons?
yeah. I once I got out of the top 10, it was more of a. I didn't watch film on those guys. It was more of just kind of reading up on them more than anything. I was starting to run low on energy after all these rookies I've watched. And I was like, okay, I'll just kind of do some light reading on these guys and kind of go from there. So I'll have to go and watch some film now, though.
Your number 7 tight
So,
end.
so my number 7 is, and I'm probably going to butcher this guy's name, Orande Gadsden.
That's
So
correct. The second.
the second, yes, number 2. Number 2. But Orande Gadsden out of Syracuse, I think he's a super interesting prospect. And that is because I am the absolute sucker for these tight ends that, aren't the greatest of blockers, but man, can they run a route. Everybody on this podcast knows my love for Dalton Kincaid. Not the greatest blocker, but man, can he run a route.
He can run some wind sprints, that's for sure.
That's for darn sure. He can run them. But yeah, this is a guy that's coming out of Syracuse that his blocking ability is kind of it's not the greatest thing of all time,
You
but
know why?
his route running it's just super smooth, and he's got some burst off the line there. He's got sure hands. I mean, he is very versatile. They used him all up and on the field. He can inline in the slot, wide out. He kind of ran everywhere. Has some very good yard after catch abilities. And I really like his abilities as a receiver. And, this is a guy that's projected as like a day 3 pick. So this is someone that you're going to be able to just kind of toss a 4th, or potentially if he gets some buzz, or if he doesn't get any buzz, I mean, you might be able to get him undrafted. So this is a guy that you can just kind of toss on your taxi squad, see if he develops anything. And if not, oh, darn, I didn't spend much on him, but he could be an interesting guy that comes out and is able to run good routes that a team likes. So I have some interest in him, and I'll be probably getting quite a few shares of him.
When I was at the combine, Orande Gadsden. You did better than me. Gadsden the second. He had a weird like running style. Like his mechanics were just awkward, but I kept doing some more digging. You said about how his blocking isn't great. That is like his primary concern with getting on the field is his blocking. But what I was trying to get at is the reason for that is we have another wide receiver convert here. He has a good route running ability, as Colten had said. He was fairly athletic. At the combine, he didn't run the 40, but at his pro day, he did. At his pro day, he ran a 4.64, which puts him at the 85th percentile and an 81st percentile speed score. Athleticism matters at the tight end position. He had a 59% burst score. He had 82.6 PFF receiving grade in his 4th year at Syracuse. He had 2 seasons of 900 yards. And we were talking about it before, if you run even if it would have been a 4.7, we're really looking at, hey, this guy needs to get some targets. But he has a little bit more cushion there with having that 4.6, 4 speed. And there, you said about how he plays in line. He actually has limited inline experience at the tight end position. He played more outside because guess what? He was a wide receiver. So he's kind of a tweener. But I had him at number 7 as well.
We're lining up so much better today. Nice.
Yep. So Colton, guess what? That brings us to number 6. Who's your number 6?
So my number 6 might be a little shocking to people, because I think a lot of people are a little bit higher on this guy, and that's Mason Taylor. But the reason I've got Mason Taylor here, a lot of people really like him and have him amongst the top of the tight ends. Don't get me wrong, I do like him. He's a good mover. He's got great hands. I mean, he rarely drops balls. That is the big thing with him. His route running is just kind of on the okay level. He doesn't have that big top speed that we like to see for the athletic guys. He doesn't have that breakaway speed or anything. And his yards after catch is, okay. He's strong at the catch point, but he doesn't do much with it afterwards. My big thing with him is he just doesn't have that dog in him. We've talked about that before with some of those other guys that they've just got it, the dog, that they're just a fight and grind and gonna just absolutely demolish people because they just want to for the fun of the fight. He's just kind of okay, he's just, I'm there, but he's got the reason I have him still so high though is because he still does have those surefire hands. I mean, the ball is coming his way. If it's anywhere near his catch radius, he is going to catch it, which I really like to see. And I think NFL teams will like that. He's projected as a day 2 pick and, projected to be a tight end 1 or 2 on his team and has that capability. I just think he needs to learn in this NFL world that he's going to have to learn to get that dog in him. If he does that, I would like him so much more. If he can find some fire to light underneath his butt. But until then, I mean, I'm just going to have him kind of sit there and that's kind of where I'm going to leave him.
Mason Taylor at the combine, he was often the tight end that was demonstrating the skills to be performed. He was very fluid with the gauntlet. He ran like one of the straightest lines that you could have during the gauntlet. So I thought that was pretty impressive. Mason Taylor, you said he needs time to develop. He's only 20 years old. He and Gadsden, they both had 10-inch hands. I meant to say that with Gadsden before. So they have the ability to catch the football. You said that he had some difficulty with some drops. So I'd have to look back on some of that.
He did not.
He did not. Well,
Mason,
that's because he has 10-inch hands.
He does not have any problems with drops. He does not drop balls.
I misunderstood. He has the bloodlines. His dad was Jason Taylor of the Dolphins. He has prototypical tight end size, 6'5", 256 pounds. And as I was trying to say here, he had 55 receptions for 546 yards here with LSU. And he's the only tight end in the school history with 100-plus receptions, 1,000 yards in his career. He likes hunting and fishing, which that's fun. Showcases his skills at the Senior Bowl and then again at the Combine. And so I don't know if you paid attention much at the Senior Bowl, but he made some tough catches. He appeared to move well, and he looked like he had those vice grip hands. So Mason Taylor is my number 6 as well.
My goodness, we're on it today. We're on one.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So
he reminds me of Tucker Kraft.
Oh. Which is
so if I had to give him a comp, Tucker Kraft is the guy, and we all remember Tucker Kraft was the second tight end that the Packers had picked in that draft, but last I checked, he's been the more productive of the two.
I need to work on my my comp skills. That needs to be my working on for next year because I'm just bad at trying to come up with comps. I'm like, who this guy looks like? He looks like him. He's an individual player.
Are you saying he is him?
He is him. That's just who he looks like. J.K. Dobbins really runs like J.K. Dobbins. It's just crazy. Just so bad at it. All right, on to our number 5.
Number 5.
We'll see if we can line up again. And we've got to be getting close to, our top 5's got to be the same, is my guess. But sitting here at my number 5, Terrance Ferguson, I really like him. I think he really kind of gained some ground after the Combine. I think a lot of people started really climbing on him. I saw him as low as like 10 early on. And now I kind of see him closer to this top 6. But Turd Ferg out of Oregon there. Had to call him that. The new Turd Ferg. Sorry, Jake Ferguson, but this guy's actually got a T, so he is the Turd Ferg. He's 6'5", 247. He's got relatively good athleticism, ran a 4.63 and then a 39-inch vertical. So he's got that explosive athleticism to him. He has got some sure hands, 73 catch rate over his college career, which is awesome. Once again, another one of those guys that his blocking for me was just kind of okay. It wasn't atrocious by any means, but it was just kind of okay. Definitely can use some refining skills. We keep talking about blocking ability, and nobody cares about that for fantasy except for, these NFL teams care about that, and that's how they get this playing time. So that's why we kind of keep bringing it up is, that's how you kind of prove yourself as a rookie tight end is you get on the field by your blocking ability. So that's why we just kind of keep bringing it up and talking about it. But if he could get that, I think he could be a pretty solid tight end. He was good for yards after the catch. So averaging 9 yards per reception in 2024, which is a pretty solid number for a tight end there. So I just kind of like him.
Wasn't 9 yards? Wasn't that his yards after contact?
Or sorry, yes, yards after contact, not yards after catch. Yes, yards after contact.
Yep, first among the tight ends in the class.
Correct. So he got that dog in him. So he was a fighter and would get those yards, and so I like him. And that's kind of why I have him above Taylor. And I know a lot of people kind of have him flip flopped, and I mean people have Taylor higher. But I just like it when they've got that dog and that strength ability to them that's willing to fight for that. So,
Colton, are you sitting down?
I am.
Terrance Ferguson is my tight end 3.
Oh my goodness! I figured you were high on him.
I'm high on him because you know why? Because he's not that tweener tight end. He can play all around the field. He's one of the best blocking tight ends in the class, but he's, as you said, he had the number 1 among the tight ends in the class with his yak with 9 yards. And he was also uber athletic, so he had a speed score at 86th percentile. You already said about his 40 time. And he had a 60% college dominator rating. And then he was one of 2 players in the tight ends that had in the green for the 40 time speed score and the burst score, the other being Ben Urasic of Georgia, my number 12 tight end. And I bet you have never even heard of him.
No.
Real quick with Ben, he was a good route runner, but he struggled to separate. He had limited speed, find soft spots in coverage. He was limited production after 2022 because of the 2023 he was injured. He was a rotational tight end, and then finally he's probably a candidate that's like a bottom of the roster or a practice squad guy that's going to be in the NFL. But I had him as my number 12 because I was looking for more upside plays. And if he has an opportunity or a chance, he has quite a bit of athleticism. So that's why I had him as high as I had him. But going back to Terrance Ferguson, when I was watching this guy at the NFL Combine, you know who I comped him to? The Winter Soldier. This guy, he has an arm sleeve and like a leg sleeve with on the same side on his left side. And it was very you could easily see it at the combine. He just looked like a beast doing every route, doing every athleticism measure that they had at the combine. And Terrance Ferguson, he was a guy that I didn't know that just completely burst onto my tight end rankings. And so Terrance Ferguson is my number 3 tight end. Oh, and I seen potential landing spots, the Seahawks, which they have no tight end of consequence right now. So there you have it, Terrance Ferguson, the Winter Soldier.
Turd Ferg, the Winter Soldier.
My number 5 was a lot of people's number 1 before the combine, and that or number 1, not number 1, but maybe number 1 or 2 or 3, top 3 easily was Harold Fannin Jr. Bowling Green. I've seen some people had him as their number 1, even over the consensus number 1 that we'll talk about shortly. Harold Fannin Jr., Bowling Green, 6'4". His size was my concern, but he came in a little bit bigger at the combine, 241 pounds. He's a move tight end body, so that lowers him in my rankings a little bit more. He has great hands, was the best catcher of footballs at the tight end position in this class. He may be the only other tight end would have been Warren at catching the football. Draft capital is going to be a major question for Harold Fannin. At one time, I had a note here that he might be picked over Warren, but I really, that's never going to happen anymore based on the athleticism scores that he ended up having. But he did lead the nation in receptions and targets, 150 targets this year, Colton, 1,500 yards, 10 touchdowns, had 1,000 yards last year. So he has 2 very productive seasons in his belt. And I had his comp as Trey McBride. He plays all over the field, and he's a difference maker when he lines up all over the field. So I thought he was bigger than expected. And Harold Fannin Jr., he's my number 5. And maybe I should have him up another notch or two, but I don't think I can. If he would have been a little bit bigger, I think he would have been, in my top 3. But number 5 is where Harold's going to sit for me.
All right, well, we'll move on to my number 4, Harold Fannin. Harold Fannin. I've got him sitting at just one notch higher. And once again, everything you said is kind of spot on. He is that move back. He can play all over the field. They used him in the backfield. They used him in the slot. They kind of used him all around. My real concern is part of the college he went to, Bowling Green. He's not facing any of these massive teams where he's playing elite defenses or everything. So I don't want to use that as a huge knock because of what he did was still pretty impressive. But it's just a little bit more concerning to me. They don't have these dominant corners and everything that can shut down a tight end like that, or linebackers that are athletic enough to kind of shut down a tight end like that. He might have played up against a couple here and there. When you're an elite guy kind of going against these lower level guys, it's easy to rack up those numbers pretty quickly. So not to knock on what he did, it's still impressive, but that was just one of my biggest concerns is he's a big dude that's going up against some of these, not elite corners and linebackers and everything. So he's probably able to just dominate them in that way. But like he said, he's got awesome route running ability. A lot of people compare him to Dalton Kincaid, which is kind of, don't say it.
Don't say that name.
Which is, it's painful to me because, what Kincaid can still be. But
let's stick with Trey McBride.
I like
Give this
Trey
guy a
McBride
chance.
a lot more right now. I like Trey McBride. But he's got that ability, and I can see it on the tape. He just absolutely dominates these people, and he's impressive with his route running and catching. Once again, I'm going to bring up blocking because it's not that good. But I don't think they really asked him to do that. It was more of hey, you're good. This is working. Let's keep giving the ball to you. So it was similar to Brock Bowers he was a huge part of this offense. Not comparing him to Brock Bowers because they're very different, but he was a huge part of the offense, so they didn't really ask him to do that. So his blocking is questionable to me, just in for that term. But I like him a lot. To sit him here at 4, and I know a lot of people are super high on him, which gets me more excited. But he's going to be one that's definitely we're going to have to pay attention to in the draft and see where these NFL teams kind of what they think of him.
Yeah, and he's got the frame to put on a little bit of weight too, which might help with his blocking ability. And Colton, he's another guy that's only 20 years old, so he's got some time to develop. I saw recently that the Saints tight end coach had met up with Harold Fannin Jr., and if he ends up with the Saints, I would say I'm going to be out.
Yeah, that would be rough.
You'd have to wait like 3 years before you see anything.
Yeah, that's a rough situation to go to. We like to say draft talent, not situation, but sometimes, man, especially with these tight ends too, if they don't get the chance to develop in the first couple of years, it could be kind of game over and move on quickly. So.
Well, it used to take tight ends about 3 years before they became productive in the NFL. We've been blessed, Colton, this past few years with guys like Brock Bowers getting drafted and being productive year 1. We've been blessed with guys like Sam Laporta with breaking out his first year. And it took about 3 years for these tight ends to break out. And that might be where we see a guy like Harold Fannin Jr., it could take him a few years before he becomes that more dominant tight end that could maybe hit the top 10 in the NFL at the tight end position and be a productive asset for you.
Yeah, with these tight ends breaking out sooner and sooner, it's definitely better for fantasy wise. You feel much better about your tight end investments. But you can also have guys that kind of blow up year one and take a back seat. I mean, we saw it happen with both Sam Laporta and Dalton Kincaid. Dalton Kincaid had a relatively good rookie year. I mean, he was what 800 yards? That's not nothing for a rookie tight end, and this year is only like 600. So, and Sam Laporta caught what 8 touchdowns his rookie year, and this year it dropped down to like 4 or 5. I can't remember off the top of my head. But we've seen him break out and then kind of slow down because these teams kind of catch on and are able to adapt to it more. So maybe what we need to see is some of these guys be able to develop a little bit more because, they come out strong and everybody gets super excited and really boosting up the value. Like last year, one of my biggest controversial takes was trade away Sam Laporta. Everyone was like, "You're crazy. You're an absolute madman. Why are you doing that? He just, after what he just did his rookie year." And I was like, well, because I can trade away Sam Laporta and I can get a whole bunch of capital, and some of these other tight ends I think are good. Like you could have traded away Sam Laporta for George Kittle and plus like a first and more even possibly. And you could have then gotten the production still and have some draft capital with it. And then we saw Sam Laporta kind of not fall off the face of the earth, but he definitely dropped in productivity, you know? So it's like some of these guys are just get super artificially boosted after that first year because it's like, wow, that's incredible. Now, Brock Bowers, I'm not saying to ever do that. I would never say that. He's his own animal. He's his own beast. But it's like, maybe,
Situation's going to change. Situation's
yeah,
going to change.
but maybe we need to see these tight ends take a year or two to kind of develop in order to really hone their skills and not kind of get figured out at the end of the first year.
My number 4, I wanted to have this guy even lower, but I don't think I could to make the rankings, is Colston Loveland from Michigan. And the reason I say that is because, and this is probably where the sour patch was for me, it comped to Dalton Kincaid. I absolutely can't stand Dalton Kincaid. I did see a comp that kind of brought me back to earth a little bit more with the Trey McBride comp. So I was like, okay, I can deal with that. He's a younger freak athlete. He is going to take time to develop. He has good route running. He has the connections there with the Chargers head coach, of course. So there's a lot of people excited that the Chargers might draft him at, pick 20-ish. Loveland led the Michigan in all receiving categories in 2024, finishing first in targets, receptions, receiving yards, and touchdown catches. His yards per reception was 10.4 yards. But that was with a crummier quarterback. And I'm saying that because I don't really care for this quarterback either, J.J. McCarthy. But when he had J.J. McCarthy in 2022 and 2023, his yards per reception was 14.5. which is a significant improvement. And so Colston Loveland, more of a move tight end. Again, he's lower on my rankings because he's more of a move tight end. He doesn't have the blocking prowess of some of these tight ends that can be on the field at all times. But please just be blessed that he's here at number 4 for me.
I knew you were going to have him here. I was just waiting to hear his name lower.
It was going to be Colton. It honestly was. But I was looking at all the stats, the production, the age. He also has 10-inch hands. His size isn't terrible, 245 pounds, but he is a move tight end. I don't like that. I've got three of my top 4 tight ends didn't do their 40 time, didn't participate in any of the athleticism scores. So he is a blank box prospect when it comes to athleticism. But I think he showed enough on the field that I can still have him here at number 4.
So I've got him as the classic, what everybody does. I've got him at my number 2. And here's why. So I know you don't like his blocking ability, but I do. At Michigan, they didn't throw the ball a whole lot during their national campaign title. Do you know what they did? They ran it. and he was still on the field, and he was a good run blocker. So he was able to get on the field for that run blocking. He blocked good. He was able to get it done. And I mean, they won the national title. So clearly he was doing it against elite defenses, you know? So he was able to get the job done as a run blocker. You know, his pass blocking, we didn't see as much once again, just because they didn't throw the ball a whole lot, and he was out running routes for them, you know? So I think he's shown enough as a blocker that he's going to be really interesting to these NFL teams, and he is going to have the draft capital. That's the other thing we forgot to mention, is the fact that he's going to
Draft
be
capital.
a day one. He's going first round, you know, as projected as far as the top 20. You know, he's probably going to be the number 2 tight end off the board, and as Colton Loveland and Tyler Warren are kind of the top 2 dogs here. In watching his tape, I mean, he's good at what he does. He's able to block. He's able to run the routes. He's got the speed to get down the field. I mean, you can see him kind of blow by these guys. So I really liked what he was able to do. Is big enough to be a tight end. I mean, he's 6'5", 245. So he's got the height. I believe Dalton Kincaid, you know, the comp, I don't see it. Dalton Kincaid's like 230 something when he came out, or like low 250s, but he's like 6'3", you know.
Again, I like the Trey McBride comp better, and that's what brought
do.
me back to earth with him at my number 4.
I believe when we were talking earlier and how you didn't like him, you kept saying Kincaid, and I think that really got stuck in your head, but I don't see Kincaid's game in him, because when I watched Dalton Kincaid, he was nothing but a receiving back, and that's all I said about him. I'm like, oh, he can catch, he can run routes, this is awesome, he's a catcher, he's a run. I can see the blocking ability in Colston Loveland, and I think the NFL teams are going to like that. And I think if he lands in the right system where they can set him up with the run, and then he sneaks out in that mid area and they do like a dump off to him, he's got the ability for yards after catch. You know, he's got that second speed that he can kind of blow by people. He's got a solid acceleration on tape. Now, like you said, he didn't compete at the combine. Once again, though, he had everything to lose and nothing to gain. He was already projected as the number 2 tight end. If he goes and competes and doesn't run something, you know, maybe he drops
Does a gunner
off a little
helm?
bit.
Does a gunner helm?
Correct. You know, something like that. You know, I'm sure like these guys have a strategy, and it's their career that they're looking at, and their agents are saying, don't do it. You know, these agents have been doing it for a while. They kind of know what they're talking about. So sure, it sucks as fantasy football players. We want to see them do it, but I can completely understand. So, and that's my argument for why I have him at number 2. I don't see the Dalton Kincaid comp that everyone kind of kept putting on him. But once again, his blocking is there because that's what Michigan did. You know, they ran the heck out of the ball, and he was always on the field blocking for him.
Said Colston Loveland's going to have the draft capital in the first round. You know who else had the number 1 round draft capital?
Who?
Dalton Kincaid. And
stop.
we're going to move on to number 3. Number 3, I had Terrance Ferguson, as we had talked about before. One more thing here with Terrance Ferguson is that the Broncos intend to draft Terrance Ferguson, former teammate of Bo Nix. So I had read that in an article, and I thought that was interesting, especially now that they have Evan Ingram at the tight end position. But he is also an older tight end, and he was injured last year, so they could still maybe get Terrance Ferguson there. And I don't know if he falls to the 3rd round or not, but I really think that he's a guy that could slip into the 2nd round of the NFL draft.
I mean, I wouldn't hate it anyways, you know, give him that year, like I said, to develop a little bit, and to develop behind Evan Ingram, that's not a horrible guy to have to develop your, you know, we saw Evan Ingram come out as that top prospect, you know, going to be the guy forever. Did great his rookie year and then kind of fell off the face of the earth, and then came back strong. You know, he's been one of those hot commodities that we've talked about that is an easy buy because people are tired of his name, and he just kept producing. You know, he almost had the receptions record 1 year or 2 years ago. So it was, I mean, just a guy that would be awesome to develop behind, I think.
Colton, I suspect your number 3 is my number 2. Who is your number 3 tight end?
So my number 3 tight end is Elijah Arroyo. something like that.
Elijah Rojo.
Arojo. Okay. I really liked him. He's my number 3 tight end. He's very dangerous, and he's an interesting guy because he's got Cam Ward throwing him the ball, the projected, number 1 draft pick, or number 1 quarterback off the board and everything. I think he makes Cam Ward look good sometimes. He's got some pretty spectacular catches coming from Cam Ward where you see him, kind of throw it a little janky, and Arojo just comes up with it and then just makes moves. Arojo has the dog in him, and he's also got the athleticism to match. This guy's got it, and I did like him a lot, and I kind of went back and forth on Loveland and him. On where I was going to have them 2 and 3. But I ultimately, I saw him as more of the, how, like you said, the move tight end. He's not as good with the blocking skills. He is more of the guy that makes the big catch. He does have the athleticism, probably better than Loveland. I think he's a little bit more athletic, but I saw the ability to block out of Loveland a little bit more. But I still love Arojo a lot, and I think he has the potential to sneak into the first round, possibly. If not, early day 2, which that's still awesome draft capital to have. So Elijah Rojo, I like him.
Elijah Rojo, he was a guy. Well, first off, he's an early declare, so the NFL liked him ahead of time. So that's where he's like, hey, I'm going to come out. I'm going to get drafted early. So that puts him in that day 1, day 2 category. I think he's going to be closer to a second round pick than a first round pick. He had pretty decent size, like you said, Colston Loveland-esque type size, maybe a little bit heavier BMI because he's 1 inch shorter. And he was the fastest tight end at the Senior Bowl this year. They marked a 19.23 mile per hour speed. And I must have really liked this because I wrote it twice in a row. Good route running, good route running. Quick speed. He had a huge best in the class college yards per reception at 16.9 yards per reception. That's 3rd percentile at the tight end position. 35 receptions for 590 yards. That's huge. Speaking of huge, he also has big hands. So that means he can catch the ball. Daniel Jeremiah had him as a top 40, the 49th top player in this year's draft. He was good at beating coverage. He was a big playmaker. He could play inline tight end, slot, out. He could play anywhere on the field, which makes him very versatile, which is why I have him as my number 2. And then lastly, his yak numbers as a pro with his explosiveness and his big plays down the field. He's just a dynamic weapon for any system, I think, that he's going to get into. This guy has a high ceiling and has elite traits, and I think he's going to get the draft capital, like you said, Colton.
Yeah, I mean, I really like him a lot. You're not ready for the comp that I just read on him, though. It's going to make you a little sad, but...
Don't tell me Dalton Kincaid.
No, not maybe similar, though, but it's Kyle Pitts is his comp.
I still believe in Kyle Pitts. I think they don't think they use him right.
That is fair.
They don't move him around the field. He should be a guy that moves around the field. And if they can get Arroyo or if they get Pitts and they move him around the field a little bit and don't just keep him in one spot where you can get a linebacker on him. I mean, come on. The Falcons are just using Pitts wrong. I think we just need to wait 1 more year before Pitts gets moved, and then he could be a dynamic weapon.
I think
situation sucks.
That's been his catchphrase is just wait another year for Pitts. Just wait another year.
Again, like Pitts, everyone was really excited for Pitts, right? He got drafted, 8th overall that year, which was one of the highest among tight ends in NFL history. He's one of the most athletic tight ends in NFL history. And I think Elijah Arroyo, I think he should be – I like that comp. I'm fine with it. And you can get him cheaper in your rookie drafts than what Pitts was. Pitts in a lot of rookie drafts was going number 1 in a number of them overall.
Yeah,
I'm not
he was going first round for sure. He was like top 3 in non-superflex leagues. He was going like number 3, 4 overall. There's a lot of hype on him, but I think he's I think with Rojo, depending on where his draft capital ends up being, he's going to be a guy that you're going to have to take in the early second. Maybe he falls to the mid second is kind of where we're looking at him. Still not a terrible spot to take a shot on a tight end. But I like him a lot. He's got that elite athleticism to him. You know, he has some injury concerns a little bit. He did tweak his knee during the Senior Bowl. Just something to keep an eye on. And I haven't really heard anything more about it since it happened. So I'm assuming it shouldn't be too big of a concern, but just something to kind of keep an eye on for him.
He wasn't active at the combine because he was riding the wave of the Senior Bowl. He completely took off after the Senior Bowl. And I did find one more note here on Elijah Rojo is that the Texans have met with him as well. So, you know, that could be concerning for a guy like Cade Stovers.
Could be concerning for him, but I like Rojo there
Ferg.
more. Or Turd Ferg. The OG Turd Ferg.
Is it Turd Ferg that's there, right?
Ferguson? Yeah.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure. Yeah, I had to think about it.
I did too. Yeah, that sounds right. Anyways, do you want to talk about our number one?
Do you have anything more about your number two with Loveland?
No. I think I poured my heart out for him.
Okay, let's go to our number one. Our consensus number one tight end in this year's class. Go for it, Colton.
All right. So my tight end number one, it's pretty obvious. That would be my goodness, why is it not loading? Jackson Hawes. You probably have. Have you heard of him?
Yes, I have him.
Oh, have you really? Georgia
Yeah,
Tech?
well, I have him. He's ranked down there, though.
Oh, yeah. Oh, okay. Tyler Warren, our number one, obviously. This was pretty much the easiest choice, you know. He's kind of been the top dog for this whole year. He's got the size, 6'6", 260 pounds. He's a big boy that can move. My goodness, he is explosive even being that big. He has good balance coordination. He's got very good hands. He can high point the ball really well. He's a good mover. Obviously, with that size, he's able to block well. He's kind of the all-around tight end with some explosive upside to him. His route running it's not bad. I mean, it could use some work definitely, but it's pretty smooth and he looks good doing it. But for the most part, I really like him. He's not going to be the surefire prospect of Brock Bowers. So don't be thinking that, you know, this is 100%. He's the number one tight end on everyone's board, that he's going to blow up year one and be the new Brock Bowers. He definitely has the elite upside of a tight end and has the absolute weapons and possibility to be effective in year one. But do not go drafting him at the number 3 overall because you think you've caught the next Brock Bowers. We've been, like Dustin said earlier, we have been absolutely just fed these tight ends that have blown up year one. Could he do it? Absolutely. But my goodness, do not rely on that. But I do really like Tyler Warren. I think he's going to be a very good tight end in the league. And I think that he has that elite upside and is going to be great.
I think landing spot's going to be dependent for Tyler Warren, just like a lot of these other tight ends that we're really excited about. I mean, we've seen guys like Kyle Pitts that get drafted to the Falcons 8th overall, and we're like, wow, the draft capital, wow, the athleticism, this guy's going to be massive. But he went to the wrong system. They're not using him correctly, and now he's completely tumbled in a lot of tight end rankings to a point where he wasn't even getting really throwing the ball last year. But Tyler Warren, as you said, he had good size. He was a huge target. Did you know that he had played quarterback in high school as well? He's another guy that's very versatile. And speaking of versatile, he also had 4 rushing touchdowns for Penn State. They completely just tried to force him the ball. He was a primary option. And the 4 touchdowns by the tight end was the most by a Big Ten tight end since the 1950s. He has also a record-breaking 2024 season, setting Big Ten single-season marks for receptions, receiving yards by a tight end. He had 104 catches for a little over 1,200 yards, both Big Ten records for the tight end position. And he also set Penn State's single season records for catches, reception yards, touchdown receptions at the position. And he had one game where he had 17 catches in one game against USC. But I thought this was a fun little nugget I wanted to share because everyone's completely. Most people that I've listened to have Tyler Warren easily as the number one tight end, and then they have Loveland at number two, and then so on and so forth. But this was something I was listening to the last couple of days. It was Cody Carpentier's draft ranking show, and he gave an interesting stat on Tyler Warren. Warren has the third shortest arms in the class, 31 and 3/4 inch arms. He is one of only 29 players since 2000 to be drafted with arms shorter than 32 inches. Of the 29, only Zach Ertz was productive. Michael Mayer to be determined.
You're looking like a T-Rex out there.
That's why I'm down under trying to
Big,
find him.
big boy with little arms.
And they weren't trying to make much out of it on his show, out of Cody's show. Cody is amazing when it comes to looking at draft prospects, and I had to share it. And if you haven't listened to Cody Carpentier and his draft ranking show, you definitely should. You can learn a lot, but you can find also some interesting nuggets like this. And it was something that I was like, wow, that's really interesting. But again, I don't know what to make of it. He's still our number one tight end, but I just thought for the interest of the show, I wanted to just kind of check that on there as well.
I mean, hey, if he has a career like Zach Ertz, you're going to be happy.
Wouldn't he be below expectations if he just had the Zach Ertz? Well, Zach Ertz wasn't very athletic.
Well, Zach Ertz has also been playing for 50 years. You can have him on your roster for 50 years.
True.
Still being productive.
Yep.
Not allowing Trey McBride or Ben Sinnott to get their shot.
Yep. I wanted to bring up one more tight end. This is the one that Zach from Decode the Quarterback, our friend from Decode the Quarterback, and I was messaging you and him, about 3 or 4 weeks ago about I had a tight end that could be a sleeper that no one's talking about. I really don't think that he's even on sleeper yet. That's Gavin Bartholomew of Pittsburgh. He's 6'5", 250 pounds. He ran a 4.71 40. His work ethic at the combine was amazing to watch. This guy, he appeared to attract other tight ends around him like a magnet. He was rocking a mullet at the combine, so he was really easy to find. And while all the other tight ends were sitting on the bench and just kind of waiting for their time, Gavin was out there on the end of the end zone, and he was looking out and watching the defensive backs and the cornerbacks run the gauntlet. And you could just tell that he was just analyzing it, and he was preparing himself. And then after he felt like he had a good feel for what the gauntlet looked like and how it ran, then there he was doing some dynamic warm-ups and getting himself ready, while all the other tight ends were just kind of wasting their time sitting on the bench, getting cold. And then, again, as you watched him, you just saw more of these guys kind of come towards him as like a magnet, like I was talking about. This guy, he was versatile in high school also. Another former quarterback in high school. He also played tight end, and he also played defensive end. He was a well-rounded player who had earned second-team freshman All-American. However, his freshman year was his peak in the receiving yards and touchdowns. Likely was because Kenny Pickett at that time was the quarterback, the Super Bowl winning Kenny Pickett in 2021. And then from 2022 on, they had really poor quarterback play. He did average around 300 yards each of his 4 years, 4 touchdowns in 2024. He looks like he's a knowledgeable player, a team leader. And, the concern is he's probably going to be more of a rotational depth tight end, and he's probably not going to get the draft capital. But I have to give this guy a shout out. I thought he was definitely showing his leadership skills out there. This is a guy that wants to play football. And Gavin is my tight end 11. And then number 12, I had Yursek. And then number 13 is where I had Mitchell Evans. I like Gavin. He was this close, Colton, of being my number 10. This close.
That close, huh?
Yep. So
Well,
that's the one you were waiting for.
I'll have to look up more on him. I just kind of did a quick look at him, and definitely has some interesting upside to him. And so I'll have to go watch some tape now.
Speaking of watching tape, next week is going to be our special 2025 NFL mock first round. And it's I'll be back to the draft episode. I'm going to be really excited to present Arnold's 32 picks of the first round. That's going to be next week. It'll be a show that you're probably going to want to listen to, not only on your podcast, but also on YouTube. So don't forget to search for us there at FF Healers on Twitter X, and then also on the YouTube channel.
Absolutely.
And with that, Colton, we have reached our top 10 tight ends for this class. If there's nothing else, the Fantasy Football Healers are out.
We're out of here. Salud. Squats. Lots and lots of 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 squats. 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 Squats.